John Goodman Wilson. I'm the developer advocate for the Europe, Middle East, and Africa region for GitHub. Yeah, there's no standard for this sort of thing. I think most people see developer evangelism or technical evangelism as a subset of developer advocacy. At least this is how I approach it, and I think I picked this up from other people. Evangelism for me is very much a one-way communication. It's me shouting from the rooftops, hey, try GitHub, or whatever, right? It's awesome, you should use it, right? Advocacy incorporates that, but it creates a second channel of communication that flows the other way. So a developer advocate to me is somebody who advocates on behalf of a product to the developer community, not just evangelizes, not just shouts it from the rooftops, but helps them find the right solution, which we hope in most cases is the product that we're advocating for, but it might not be. An advocate is somebody who helps and aids, not somebody who sells and shouts. But on the other hand too, developer advocacy is a two-way role. We advocate for the developers, or on behalf of the developers, to the company that we work for, to help the product team make good decisions about the product, such that the results conform well to what people are expecting, right? So frequently, product people won't hear about problems with a piece of software except through bug reports that have been filed. But when you can talk to somebody face-to-face, you can get much more candid responses from them. And frequently these are very fruitful to bring back to the product team. And when you hear enough of these sorts of responses, you begin to build a mental model for the developers that you work with, and you can represent them inside of meetings, inside of product discussions, right? And help them make better decisions on behalf of the developer customers. Yeah, so DevRel Salon began in Paris. I moved there about 2 years ago, maybe a bit over 2 years ago. In Paris, there are a lot of developer-facing businesses, so I guess you might call it B2D, business to developer. But there wasn't a lot of developer advocacy going on, or developer relations, or even developer marketing. There was some. Algolia very famously had, at the time, a fairly large developer advocacy program. And many people were looking to Algolia as a model for how they could run their own business, but they didn't understand what developer advocacy was or how to implement it well. So I began the salon with the twofold purpose of creating a community where people who practice developer relations can gather, can meet, can share information, can complain together, because, we love to complain. But also as a forum where we could invite other companies who are doing B2D-like activities to come in and discuss with DevRel practitioners what we do, why do we do it, what are the benefits of doing developer relations, and in that way advocate for developer relations. We were developer advocates, get it? To spread the role and legitimize it inside of the Paris tech scene. So about 8 months ago, I moved to Amsterdam to join GitHub. And I didn't want to leave the Paris salon behind. So I found a couple of people who had been very passionate about what we were doing there and deputized them to continue running the salon in my absence. They've been doing a fantastic job. So Dan and Valerian, if you're watching this, thank you. You're doing great. And now we're here in Amsterdam to replicate this experiment and see if we could do the same thing. Of course, Amsterdam is different than Paris. And I'm still learning the shape of the tech scene here, and we'll have to shape the salon to match the way that the businesses here deal with developers. But, I feel very optimistic that we can create a really thriving community. I think open source remains incredibly relevant. On one hand, I work for GitHub. Open source is very relevant to our business, so yes, of course, I'm going to say something like that. But from a personal perspective, having grown up with open source software and being a child of the 90s, it's very hard for me to imagine a world without open source software. It's very hard for me to imagine the continued level of innovation happening in the software world without open source as a driving factor. Open APIs are great when you have open data, or you want to create open data, or you have data that you want to share. APIs are a gateway into a data source, and they're a mechanism for sharing data, especially when you have very large data sets that you can't easily just download and analyze yourself, right? Or you have data sets that you want people to add to collaboratively, right? And you want a central repository where others can work together to add, refine, and improve the data set, right? But APIs are only really part of the story, because sometimes you need functionality, right? APIs are great for data. You can use APIs to expose functionality using remote procedure calls, for example, a concept that's been around for a very long time. But frequently you need to understand how those remote procedure calls work in order to best take advantage of them, or if you want to contribute to their improved functionality, you want to fix bugs or fix security problems, right? If you want to see collaborative effort around functionality, it has to be open source software, because exposing an API is not enough. An API only gives you data, but if you want to change functionality, you have to see the source code. So I don't think APIs are sufficient for continued innovation in the web space, right? Even in this age of really nice, highly functional remote procedure call like APIs. I think the number one thing that companies can learn from communities is that there's not always the very neat alignment of expectations between what a company wants and what a community wants, to the extent that you're trying to serve that community with your product, right? And sometimes you have an instinct to fight that, and maybe that instinct is right. So for example, Slack is a product that's focused on business communications, but there are communities of users who want to, there's a meta community here. There's a meta community of people who want to use Slack to host community conversations, right? That's not a product that Slack was designed for. It's not a product that, or not a use case that they want to pursue. And you could say, well, they should listen to the meta community that want to use it for smaller communities, and adapt the product to fit. But that would be wrong, right? That would be unnecessarily diffusing the scope of Slack to the point where it becomes very difficult to focus on business communication. So sometimes there's going to be this misalignment, and it's useful to hear it, and you need to address it when it arises, but you don't always have to listen to it. The other case, on the other hand, sometimes you will find a community that has found a use case that you would never have thought of on your own. So I used to work for a company called Screen Hero. We had a product that was designed for collaborative screen sharing. And one of the communities that arose around this piece of software was the pair programming community. We were not pair programming. We did not do pair programming at Screen Hero, so this is not something that occurred to us, but it turned out the product was really useful for people who wanted to pair remotely. So one person's in the West Coast, another person's on the East Coast, but they want to work together on the same computer. Turns out our product was perfect for that, but we wouldn't have known that if we hadn't gone out and tried to listen to the community of people who were using our software and try to understand what they were doing. Don't know that I have anything especially profound to say. Communities are gathering of people that have a shared interest and have a shared set of values. And companies want to reach communities because it's more effective to market a product to entire communities rather than to single individuals, right? And it's easier to tailor a product to communities instead of just doing bespoke one-offs for each individual they meet, right? And so at some level there has to be an alignment between what the company is doing and what the communities that they want to reach are interested in. And it's not always obvious what their interests are just watching their behavior, for example, right? You have to talk to them, you have to enter the community, you have to participate in the community, you have to become a part of the community. And when you do that, you can better understand the shared values and the shared interests of that community, and that makes creating a commercial product tailored to that community much, much easier, right? Because it removes the friction of attempting to understand them from afar and allows you to embed yourself there and understand it directly.